Welcome back to True Geordie Extra. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Now, the heavyweight champion of the world of the UFC has just walked out the door with the gold belt still strapped around his waist. And Dana White has announced it, but he's put it in a very interesting way.
You know, I don't know. You know, we get to this point where I've told you guys this before. You know, if you don't want to be here, I think Francis is in a place right now where he doesn't want to take a lot of risk. Feels like he's in a good position where he could fight lesser opponents and make more money.
Stop you right there, Dana. This is Francis Ngannou, a man who literally fought Cyril Gane with one knee, or maybe even both knees, I can't remember, jacked up to fuck on his final fight of his contract. So if he loses that fight, he loses the belt, he's out on his arse, he's got no more money coming in guaranteed, and he's pissed you off to fuck. He took the biggest risk in the history of the UFC. He bet everything on himself. This is the biggest risk taker you ever did see in the UFC. Like, that is not up for debate. But no, the narrative from Dana is he wants more money for easier fights. You see, this is how Dana does it. And I get he's a promoter, but as a promoter, you're supposed to build up new guys. What he's doing here is he's kicking a guy on the way out the door, and I just don't agree with it. Francis Ngannou has come through a lot in his life, and all of that shit that this guy went through gave him the courage to actually say, you know what, I'm not getting my worth, I'm never going to get my worth, so I'm going to fight my contract out, hopefully if I can, hold on to the UFC belt so that I still have the star power, and then I'm going to go and get some fucking big money, because these guys are never going to pay me what I'm worth. Just the idea that Francis Ngannou wants easy fights. Everyone's an easy fight for Francis Ngannou. That's why he's the heavyweight champion of the world, man. Beat the living shit out of Stipe Miocic. Beat Cyril Gane without a fucking working leg. Just say, I'm just going to wrestle the fuck out of you because I can just do what I want with you. I understand that this is part of Dana's job in his head. Like, he has to make the UFC look as good as they can. But you don't have to crap on someone on the way out the door. The only people who are scared are anyone who would have to fight Francis Ngannou. Let's be real here. I've met a lot of fighters. A lot. There is no one I've met in my entire fucking life who gives off the fucking scary vibe more than Francis Ngannou. I shit you not, like Tyson Fury is not even comparable. I'm talking real fight here, not boxing, gloves, rules. I'm talking just stand next to them. You will know for a fact who the fuck is the scarier dude.
We're gonna let him do that. We're going to release him from his contract. We're going to give up our right to match.
We're going to release him. That sounds like he's been fired. The man fought his contract out so that he could then go and get the biggest money possible that yous would opt not to match anyway.
And he can go wherever he wants and do whatever he wants.
He can because he fought out his contract.
We did everything we could to try to make this fight happen and try to give him the fight, but you know, he's got it in his head that there's bigger opportunities outside the UFC with, you know, lesser opponents.
Okay. Whether they're lesser opponents or not, the number one goal for any MMA fighter or boxer is to make as much money as you possibly can. What does it say about the UFC, who claim to be the biggest MMA organization in the world, which they are, that they can't even keep a hold of their own heavyweight champion? What does that tell you? Something is wrong. This should never be able to happen. So anyone who is still on the side of the company that the UFC pay their fighters pretty well, you get your worth, yada, yada, yada. They couldn't even keep a hold of their own heavyweight champion, man. How many big names have we seen in major long-term disputes with the UFC, which has resulted in us not seeing them fight anywhere near enough? Nate Diaz just fought his contract out, don't forget. And I know Nate Diaz is towards the end of his career, but the point is whether you like it or not, he's in the biggest 5 names in the organization. Think of how many years we went where we barely seen Conor McGregor. The contract issues with Jorge Masvidal, who at one point was top 5 biggest names in the company as well. It's becoming more and more common. Now, don't get me wrong, just because I disagree with Dana's point about Francis being scared does not mean that I'm completely on Francis's side in terms of this decision. He may make more money, he may go out there and do other things, but I don't know if he's going to have the same legacy, the same global impact that he can in the UFC, and I'm not sure he's made the right decision. But we're going to look at what he has to say.
They have also said that I'm scared. of fighting Jon Jones.
His fucking face, yeah. Are you joking? Like, who? This little skinny Jon Jones guy who had to fucking wait 10 fucking years just to finally get the courage to go up to heavyweight when he's been bigger than every single fighter he's fought at light heavyweight. And you're telling me I'm scared? Cool.
I don't know where they came from with that one. That sounds very ridiculous, in my opinion.
Oh, I love that.
Because I've been calling for this fight for over 2 years. I've been waiting for this fight forever. And I've been fighting guy even with one knee, with injury.
Exactly, man. He has been waiting for Jon Jones to put enough weight on to finally come up to fucking heavyweight to fight him for God knows how long. But let's not forget also, just to the point about the money issue, how long were we waiting for Jon Jones to renegotiate with the UFC? He was also doing this shit. This is a problem that is rife within MMA, and the years where we used to watch the big stars fight multiple times a year, it's fucked now. We don't get that anymore. The UFC, believe me, some of you lot might not understand because you weren't watching back in like 2007, 2008 even. It's on the downturn, the UFC. It's more about the brand and the lesser known fighters than it is about the fights the fans really fucking want to see nowadays. They don't make the effort, and that's why they fucked this one up.
No, I'm not scared. The only thing that I'm scared of is to be trapped. It's not to lose my freedom, which I value very much. You guys know how the UFC contract can be restrictive, and as an independent contractor, you don't really have a say in that contract. You don't.
The things I've heard about the UFC contracts are that they are the worst thing ever. The way they tie you down and they can toss you aside when they want, they can renew when they want. It is insane how terrible they are. And these poor guys just have to sign up and hope for the best, because where else are you going to go to make a name for yourself in MMA?
You don't want to be here. You don't have to be here.
Anyone who doesn't have to be here doesn't have to be here. You know that's not true, right? You know how restrictive the UFC contract can be for a...
Mate, Francis over here in his fucking second or third language and literally just running up a fucking train on Dana White's words here.
On the other hand, this is a sport. This is business. I have my personal life. I'm in Cameroon. I'm with my family. And at the end of the day, this what matter, you know, like I have my balance in life. I'm doing good, so don't you worry about me.
The thing that gives Francis the power to walk away from this kind of contract is because he knows true struggle in life. He knows what it really is to have nothing. And he seems to not be controlled by money as easily as other people are, which is what gave him that confidence that other fighters don't seem to have, to go in there and fight his contract out and be a free man. Also, the guy is fucking great. He's a great fighter. You can't take that away from him.
They just talk about the money that they give me that could have made me the biggest paid heavyweight in the history, which is how much they can't tell. Biggest than who? Nobody knows nobody gets.
It's a good point by Francis there when he says they're trying to control the narrative, because they say we would have made him the highest paid heavyweight in the history of the UFC. And he's like, says who? Where's the evidence? There's no proof of anything that you're saying. And that's how they control fans' brains, because they say that. And as a fan, we go, he turned that down? Wow, he must be stupid or whatever. And he's like, mate, there's no proof of anything that you're saying. The reality is being the highest paid guy in an organization that notoriously underpays their fighters still doesn't mean that you're rightly compensated for your true value. That being said, I'm not saying the UFC are lying. We just don't know.
I asked for a sponsorship, a right of a sponsorship, which we've been ripped off. We can't have sponsorship. I have for health insurance. Couldn't have. I asked for a fighter advocate, somebody in the board meeting who will advocate for a fighter. I asked for that. I couldn't have those stuff that I asked for.
I mean, I rate Francis here. He's kind of going out for all of the fighters, saying, you know, we should have healthcare, we should have sponsorship rights, we should have all of that. And that is all true. But unfortunately, he had no chance. Like, it's very noble of him, but he never stood a chance. It's very much either take the money or fuck off. And that's the way the UFC look at it. But I appreciate Francis saying, look, I didn't expect to get all of that, but I was asking for it out of principle because it's the right thing to do. And I think that shows the caliber of the man we're talking about here in Francis. Some of you lot might think he's stupid for turning down the money. And hell, maybe he is, but we've got to rate that his heart was in the right place. And it wasn't just all about him.
By the way, in April, which was the last time we had you on the show, I'm watching Tyson Fury fight. And then all of a sudden you're in the ring with Tyson Fury and he tells the world, we want to make this happen. Like, it was unbelievable scenes. And then it just feels like that whole thing kind of went away. What happened? Why didn't the Fury fight materialize?
I don't know. I think he's retired, come back, want to fight Usyk and all those stuff. I don't know where he's at right now, but I'm going to find out.
You're going to find.
Is it time?
So let's talk about Francis in boxing there. He's talking about the Tyson Fury fight. Just to give you an example of the difference in money, the UFC offered Francis $24 million in total, $8 million a fight over 3 fights. Now, Tyson Fury against Deontay Wilder in his last fight with him made $22 million in one fight before he got his pay-per-view split. And the pay-per-view split he got was 60%. So God only knows how much he made after everything in one fight. So even if Francis goes in there and loses, he's probably going to make more in one fight than he would in 3 UFC fights. There's a real chance of that. That being said, he could go in there and make a damn fool of himself, and some people think that that's what would happen. But honestly, when you look at the fights that Dillian Whyte had with Tyson Fury, the fight that Derek Chisora had with Tyson Fury, you look at the state they're in physically compared to Francis Ngannou, who has that one-touch kill. He hits harder than them. There's not a doubt in my mind he does. I'm not saying he beats Tyson Fury, but he is an exciting addition to heavyweight boxing immediately, and he will bring the numbers. He didn't bring great numbers for the UFC because he wasn't marketed properly. But you imagine that story in the boxing world of this kid who grew up working in the sand mines, who did everything he could to get into France and fought his way up into the UFC, won UFC gold, walked away from his contract, and now he's in boxing. Remember the hype McGregor-Mayweather generated? I'm not saying it'll be on that level, but the story is there, and people get excited by stories. So this isn't even about whether or not Francis would make a great boxer. It's about, would he bring in the eyes and therefore make a load of money? And for me, that's an easy yes. A lot of people think that MMA fighters can't transition into boxing because of the McGregor-Mayweather event. Floyd Mayweather doesn't get hit, man. And Conor McGregor, as we found, is not a harder hitter as what we thought he was back then. Francis Ngannou is the hardest hitting MMA fighter of all time. That automatically changes things, especially in the heavyweight division where fighters take a lot more punishment and a lot more damage. And even if he got in there with fighters like Dillian Whyte and Derek Chisora before fighting at Tyson Fury, I think he does all right. Don't get me wrong, against a really skilled technical guy like Fury, I think it's a different world. But against some of those other guys, I think he does all right. The other options Francis obviously could have would be the PFL or Bellator, but I doubt they've got that kind of money, if I'm being honest. So this may be a mistake. The boxing might not work out. He could go in there against a pro boxer and get knocked clean out, and then his stock drops, and then the UFC try and give him a cut price deal, and he doesn't get the original money he should have had. And he really is betting on himself all the way here, and I respect that. But the one thing I'll give him credit for is he's left the door open by being a gentleman. He's been professional. He's disagreed with Dana publicly, but he's never took the low road. And I do think that there is a door open there for him. So some of the UFC fans do seem to have turned on Francis a little bit for walking away, criticising him, saying he was holding up the division, fighting once a year. But I think that this is a UFC issue as much as it's a Francis issue. These guys, they seem to struggle to put on the heavyweight title fights, no matter who the champion is. And I'll give you an example, because obviously, yes, he won the belt off Stipe, then he fought a year later, less than a year later against Cyril Gane. But then if you look at Stipe Miocic, his record, when he became champion, he fought once in 2021, once in 2020, once 2019, and twice 2018, once 2017. So Stipe was hardly fighting that often. When Daniel Cormier won the belt, he defended it the same year he won it, and then he fought once the year after and once the year after that. So I think that this is just an issue with the UFC, to be honest, as well as Francis. And I think it's harsh when he has been injured to hammer him for it. So they've set up the Cyril Gane versus Jon Jones fight, and a lot of people early on are picking Jon Jones based on the fact of when Cyril Gane fought Francis, He got out-wrestled, and Jon Jones is a good wrestler. Makes sense. The difference is, I think, is Cyril Gane had no idea Francis was going to wrestle him. He is going to go into that fight with Jon Jones knowing fine well, you're going to want to wrestle the fuck out of me, so I need to be training for that. And I think that Cyril is a natural heavyweight. He hasn't had to bulk up to be that way, and his stand-up is elite for the weight class. And when you look at the previous fights Jon Jones has had against Anthony Smith, Thiago Santos, and Dominic Reyes, he wasn't wrestle heavy in those fights for whatever reason, and he did not perform well in any of those last 3 fights at all. It was terrible, actually, and he really scraped through Thiago Santos, who was injured during the fight, and Dominic Reyes, you could easily argue, won 3 rounds to 2, and look at Dominic Reyes since that fight. He is not one of the best in the division. Oh, and just to add on to that, that was 3 fucking years ago. So Jon Jones has put a lot of weight on, been completely inactive in terms of fighting for 3 fucking years, and is now fighting a very good fighter. So I think everyone writing Cyril Gane off, you need to calm the fuck down. And that is a problem for the UFC, because if you're trying to spin the narrative that Francis Ngannou ain't the number 1 guy anymore, if the guy he beat goes and kicks the shit out of what you're calling the GOAT, then you have a problem with that narrative. It doesn't add up. So I think the ideal scenario for everyone here could be Francis goes and has a massive mega money fight in boxing, re-signs with the UFC. If Jon Jones wins his fight against Gane, then they make the mega fight between those two. I don't think that's going to happen though. So overall, I think this could well be a mistake by Francis, but at the same time, you got to root for the guy. He came from nothing, went out like a champ, as the champ, and is now hopefully going to make a shitload of money. So I support that, but equally, it's risky, big time. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Is this a win for Francis or is it a loss? Only time will tell. Let me know what you think. Hit that like button, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.